Debate, and I call Kenneth Gibson to be followed by Miles Briggs.
Officer, and I'd like to warmly welcome the Cabinet Secretary's happy personal news. And I'm delighted to support this Scottish budget and pay tribute to Finance Secretary Kate Forbes, her ministerial team and officials who have all worked so hard to produce a detailed and positive budget for Scotland at a time of great financial challenge and uncertainty, all within the parameters of the limits set by the Independent Scottish Fiscal Commission and amidst the ongoing machinations of the Treasury. Investing £197 million in the new Scottish Child payment, doubling it to £20 a week, 3 years ahead of schedule, amidst much muttering from the opposition, will make a huge difference to recipients, as indeed will the £150 council tax grant to 73% of our households. And as will continuing investment in the NHS, affordable, energy-efficient housing and a much more generous local government settlement than we see south of the border under the Tories, despite their ludicrous attempts to be seen as the champions of our councils. I doubt even they believe it. And of course, we will see £840 over the next 3 years in new money being allocated to the National Care Service. Of course, no other party made any attempt whatsoever to provide an alternative budget. The Tories praise one-off consequences that won't, we hope, be clawed back by the Treasury, whilst asking for extended rates relief and increased local authority funding. Meanwhile, in England, Tory cuts to local government over the last decade amount to 37% in real terms and continue. Birmingham City Council has to make further cuts of £41 million in 22-23, rising to £107 million by 2025-26. A headline in last Monday's Times read, "Budget cuts mean 11 million rural potholes will go unfilled in England," and lamented a broken Tory manifesto promise to increase spending on council road maintenance by £500 million a year. Instead, from April, it will be cut in England by £480 million, a 40% cut in 2 years. Regarding Scotland, no attempt has been made to explain how much additional local authority funding the Finance Secretary should deliver and from where in the budget it should be found. Indeed, when asked directly by Minister for Public Finance's Stage 1 debate what exact amount should be allocated to local authorities, all Douglas Lumsden could say in reply was, and I quote, "I will easily set the budget whenever the government wants to move out of office." Woeful stuff. The SNP will be in government for at least another 4 years if the Tories want to be seen as even a competent opposition, let alone an alternative government. They really need to raise their game. I'd rather actually take interventions from one of the two major parties, if you don't mind, Mr Rennie. We have local government elections coming, and the last time we had them, of the 96 council seats contested in Ayrshire, the Lib Dems had not one candidate. In fact, the last time they contested a council seat in my constituency, they came 10th, only because the Greens didn't have a candidate in that ward. Mr Briggs.
Miles Briggs.
Grateful for the member for taking this intervention. Can he tell me what cuts his council will be facing due to this budget?
Kenneth Gibson.
Council funding, as has been clearly expressed through the budget, and indeed it's 3.5% in North Ayrshire before the addition of the £120 million. Now, when Jerry Hassan wrote The Strange Death of Labour Scotland a few years ago, I doubt even he imagined the precipitous decline of that once dominant political force following years of indolence, incompetence and taking voters for granted. And yet at Stage 1 we were given a stark demonstration of exactly why Labour has plummeted into its present rut as Scotland's third party here at Holyrood and fourth in terms of Scottish seats at Westminster. Following the Cabinet Secretary's confirmation of independent Scottish Fiscal Commission figures that a resource budget will reduce by 5.2% in real terms, while our capital allocation is slashed by 9.7%, courtesy of Westminster, what was Labour's reaction? To denounce the wicked Tories for cutting Scotland's funding at a time of rocketing inflation as we recover from Brexit and the pandemic? Not a bit of it. Daniel Johnson, Jackie Baillie, Pam Duncan-Glancy and Paul Sweeney treated us to a tirade of invective against the SNP government with only a 2-sentence whimper of a critique regarding the Tories being disingenuous from Daniel Johnson and not a word from the others. Becoming increasingly marginalised over the last 2 decades, Labour has declined from holding 53 to 2 Scottish Parliament constituencies, both only because of desperate appeals to Tory voters for tactical votes. So it's little wonder they fear to criticise UK Tory cuts when it's that party's voters both Daniel Johnson and Jackie Baillie rely on so heavily. The others have no such excuses. As with the Aberdeen 9, it appears Labour is smoothing the path for lots of local deals involving the Better Together parties across our councils come May. And as to their budget comments, calling them proposals would be a stretch, in evidence to the Finance and Public Administration Committee last week, the Finance Secretary diplomatically and politely advised the committee that she did not recall seeing costings. And there is certainly not capacity for anything in the region of £1.8 billion, the cost of the pay increase for care workers Labour demands. And only yesterday, Jackie Baillie submitted a motion calling for what she called a proper pay rise for nurses, without mentioning that Scottish nurses are the best paid in the UK, or the merest hint of what a proper pay rise might be, and how it could be funded. Their wish list for a budget the Cabinet Secretary has repeatedly made clear is fully allocated can only be met by cutting deep into other budget lines. And at committee 9 days ago, Daniel Johnson offered to share his party's mythical costings, but alas, they have yet to appear. And what of this newfound budget-busting interest in care workers? We know when Labour left office in 2007, Scottish care workers were paid a measly £5.35 an hour. Despite the financial crisis, austerity and rising demand, the SNP government has increased our rate to £10.50, a 96% increase over 15 years. Inflation over that period has been 45%, so more than twice the rate of rising prices. Our rates are higher under the SNP in Scotland, higher than Labour in Wales, higher than the Tories in England. And we recall in Glasgow, Labour spent millions on legal fees trying to deny female care workers and others equal pay. Presiding Officer, Labour has never recovered from its humiliation in 2009 when it set out reasonable budget demands, all of which then Finance Secretary John Swinney met, only to have Labour then vote the budget down before crawling back a week later to vote for it, identically worded for favour in election. And now seems that each year it cynically makes the most unaffordable demands as an excuse not to back an SNP budget. Can I gently suggest that if Labour wished to return to those halcyon days when they held more constituencies in Scotland than the Lib Dems, a more responsible and grown-up budget approach might help. Support the budget.
I call Miles Briggs to be followed by Carol Mockin.